In the early hours of June 13th, Israel's F-35 fighter jets took off quietly, targeting Iran's critical infrastructure, nuclear facilities, radar stations, underground command posts, and air defense nodes. For 72 hours, Iran's military capabilities collapsed, and its command centers became paralyzed. The entire Middle East waited for Beijing's response, but Beijing remained silent. The Foreign Ministry issued its usual scripted response: China is deeply concerned and opposes violations of Iran's sovereignty. Xinhua news agency quietly relayed the message. On June 14th, Foreign Minister Wang Yi spoke with the Iranian foreign minister, using the phrase clearly condemn, which sounded like an attempt to show support. But less than 24 hours later, Wang Yi spoke with Israel's foreign minister, and his tone softened dramatically. He merely said he opposes the use of force and doesn't dare to utter the word condemn. By the time CCP General Secretary Xi Jinping appeared on June 17th, the fifth day of bombing, he did not call a special meeting or make a direct statement. Instead, during a meeting with the president of Uzbekistan, he repeated the foreign ministry's rhetoric that China is deeply concerned. There was no clear position, no suggestion, not even a change in wording. China's inaction became the final response to a call for help from its ally. Behind this diplomatic silence lies an ironic fact. China's decades of heavy investment in Iran now seemed worthless, unable to command a firm response. Xi Jinping did take action, but no one listened to him. On the surface, it seemed like Beijing had done nothing, but in reality, Xi Jinping did take steps, though no one was willing to engage with him. From June 16th to 18th, Xi visited Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. The official topic was Central Asian cooperation, but everyone knew this was really a diplomatic mission to rescue Iran. China's real intention was to quietly open a military aid channel for Iran through Kazakhstan's Caspian seaports, bypassing U.S. forces and sanctions to deliver radars, ammunition, and technical personnel. However, this plan was quickly exposed. Kazakhstan didn't give in or endorse the idea. China's attempt to use Central Asia as a route failed before it even got started. China had to turn to its old ally, Russia. On June 19th, Xi spoke personally with Putin, trying to coordinate positions on Iran, but Putin quickly shifted the conversation and shrugged off the issue. During the 2025 St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, Russian President Vladimir Putin addressed the topic of air defense cooperation with Iran. He stated that Russia had previously proposed joint air defense projects to Tehran, but Iran showed little interest. Putin emphasized that the strategic partnership agreement between Russia and Iran does not include any defense-related clauses, and Tehran has not requested military assistance from Moscow. To sum up, the once promised China-Russia-Iran triangle now appears to be a temporary alliance where each country is focused on its own survival. When fighting actually started, it became clear who was left standing alone in the trenches, and that country was China. Iran's defeat and China's inaction stem from fear, not reluctance. This isn't just a diplomatic hesitation, it's a full-scale strategic retreat. The Chinese Communist Party knows full well that any action would inevitably bring the conflict to its doorstep. That's why it desperately feigned indifference, delayed its response, and even avoided the simplest condemnation. Because the risks behind such actions are what it fears the most. This time, the Chinese Communist Party refrains from taking action due to a direct fear of President Trump. When the media questioned whether China was assisting Iran, a reporter mentioned a mysterious plane flying from China to Iran. Trump responded that though he has a good relationship with Xi Jinping, he can't say for sure that China would get involved in the Iran conflict. The CCP understands that any involvement, whether sending a technical team, delivering anti-missile parts, or even just landing a Chinese military plane at an Iranian airport, could provoke a preemptive strike by the U.S. military. The U.S. has demonstrated a zero-tolerance plus total information control approach, making Beijing realize that it's not just a matter of assisting Iran. Once it takes action, China itself could become the next target of a decapitation strike. So the CCP stays silent. It won't even dare to say something as low-cost as a condemnation. The CCP is terrified that one word from Trump could push China into becoming the next Iran. On the fifth day of Iran's bombing, Xi Jinping returned to Beijing from the Central Asia Summit, finally realizing that this was not just a failed diplomatic test, but that Putin was completely unreliable. Amid the explosions in Tehran, Putin never uttered the words "support Iran." Instead, he refused military assistance, accepted requests from high-ranking Iranian officials to evacuate, expressed understanding for Israel, and ultimately washed his hands of the situation. He said Iran didn't want to cooperate with Russia on the development of an air defense system. But is Putin really neutral? No, Putin is seizing the opportunity to extract people, resources, and strategic buffers. He knows that once Iran is done for, the resources will be up for grabs. In fact, to the east of the Caspian Sea, Russia has quietly been testing the oil and gas corridors of northern Iran and Turkmenistan, preparing to fill the strategic gap left by China. A clearer picture emerges. Russia is not shielding Iran from bullets. Instead, it is planning how to take over once Iran is split apart. Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party can only express deep concern and pull its overseas nationals back home. Afraid of the military. There's even a more lethal risk than politics. This battle in Iran has completely shattered the CCP's decades-long military industry myth. The systems that the CCP designed, aided, and boasted about were exposed as failures on the global stage. Let's start with the radar. Iran's main radar system comes from Shiraz Electronics Industries, a project heavily supported by the CCP's 14th Institute. The core model is the export version of the JY-14, specifically touted as a long-range phased array radar capable of anti-stealth, anti-electronic interference. CCTV even called it the model project for China's anti-stealth radar going global. But when the F-35s flew in formation, Iran couldn't detect all of them. Next, the air defense shelters. Iran's Fordow underground nuclear facility used a design based on the CCP's Northwest nuclear defense shelters, specifically the deep mountain bunker counter-penetration model. The CCP once confidently claimed that this structure could withstand bunker buster level attacks. And yet, the B-2 effortlessly breached it. A single round of precision strikes destroyed the main reaction chamber, exposing the fact that these bunker designs couldn't stand up to real combat. Finally, the most hyped missile farm. The CCP helped Iran build a distributed cold-launch missile system. The silos were disguised as farmland, with hydraulic or manual launch mechanisms to avoid heat signatures and prevent detection by satellites. The CCP called it the International Transfer Application of Dongfeng Series cold launch technology, and even featured it in the Rocket Force's overseas promotional materials. The entire missile network was wiped out. The US-Israel Joint Battlefield AI system almost instantly pinpointed the coordinates, and Iran's missiles were eradicated before they could even respond. What's more absurd is that Iran's entire air traffic control system was briefly taken over by the US military's electronic warfare units, and they couldn't even transmit the enemy's attack information. In other words, this isn't just Iran's failure, it's the failure of the CCP's military-industrial model, its strategic framework, and its understanding of future warfare completely collapsing. At this point, does the CCP still dare to help Iran? That's not saving anyone. It's willingly handing over its failed military projects to be re-examined by US military exercise units. The CCP knows very well that this war has completely exposed its technical halo in the Middle East. Any further involvement would only escalate its failure, turning its illusions into a global joke for everyone to see. Fear of the American military. In the Iran conflict, the CCP understood the stakes clearly, not just the fall of their allies, but that the US military was acting too quickly, too precisely, and too ruthlessly. The CCP thought the US would follow a procedure, focus on public opinion, and engage in a prolonged war. But this time, the US-Israel alliance showed an entirely different strategy. It wasn't about who they were fighting, but about who exposed themselves first. Iran had believed that the US would enter negotiations, preparing for a sixth round of talks on June 15th, but the US didn't wait. Upon discovering that Iran was preparing to strike US military bases in the Middle East, F-35s were already refueling and taking off. What the CCP fears most is this kind of intelligence-driven, direct strike approach. It knows that once it's caught supporting Iran, whether by transporting equipment, dispatching technical personnel, or secretly providing intelligence, Trump would have enough reasons, backed by historical precedent, to order direct retaliation. The US military wouldn't need to strike Beijing directly. By targeting Chinese outsourcing companies and communication nodes in the Middle East, they could cripple the entire CCP-backed proxy network overnight. This is why Beijing would rather take the criticism, shrink behind the walls, and remain silent. Fear of showdown. For Beijing, what does aiding Iran really mean? It's not just about fighting a proxy conflict or playing a regional game. It's about triggering a global showdown that it's not even remotely prepared for. The CCP's strategic bottom line is clear. It wants to delay, drag its feet, and operate in the gray zone, doing business, expanding influence, and building channels. But it absolutely does not want to go all in right now. Aiding Iran would force it to reveal its cards early. China would have to choose between the US or Iran. It would become clear whether it's a responsible regional power or a member of the Axis of Terror. Its military capabilities would also be exposed in a hot war. The CCP doesn't want to answer any of these questions right now, because once it faces off against the US military, all the illusions will be exposed. Its friends in the global south, its promise built-in road security commitments, and its boasting of a new model of peaceful development would be all exposed by the realities of war. What the CCP fears most is having to reveal its cards before it's ready. While still in wolf warrior mode verbally, casts abstentions at the United Nations and dares not make concrete statements. The purge led by Zhang Youxia has just finished, with 39 generals under investigation and a complete restructuring of the command chain. The combat system is disjointed, and military morale is shaky. Who will stabilize the troops? Who will command? Who will take responsibility? In the tech system, domestic chips can be demonstrated but can't be mass-produced. Laser radar can be initiated but can't be delivered. Hypersonic weapons can be test-fired but can't be exported. The entire high-tech warfare capability is still stuck in the model phase. And China still hasn't built an effective war material strategic reserve system yet. There's not enough oil, food is in short supply, and foreign exchange reserves are being drained by the US. Even Kazakhstan is dragging its feet on helping send military supplies to Iran via the Caspian Sea. Xi Jinping's health is increasingly failing, and the high leadership is starting to operate under an informal succession system. This isn't a country ready for war. It's a scrambled card table, where the cards are not in order and the dealer is sick. The CCP's high command isn't planning for war, they're jockeying to see who can survive to clean up after the confrontation with the US. So, Beijing isn't holding back this time. It's paralyzed, too scared to act, unable to do anything. The Axis collapses. After the war started, Iran's high-ranking officials didn't turn to Beijing first, but to Moscow. Multiple intelligence sources indicate that Iranian leader Khamenei's close ally had already secretly contacted Russian officials to discuss evaluation routes and asylum plans for the Khamenei family. To put it bluntly, they're packing up valuables and fleeing to Moscow, leaving the US to bomb the country. The Khamenei family, 5 children who control all of Iran's oil exports, religious institutes, state assets, the economic reach of the Revolutionary Guard, and the propaganda system are not just fleeing. Their departure is a prelude to the collapse of the regime. Russia's response has been opportunistic. They don't need to send troops, make statements, or risk offending the US or Israel. All they need to do is open their arms to accept Khamenei's gold, foreign currency, jewels, and secret accounts, and they'll profit handsomely. This shows that the so-called Russia-China-Iran anti-US axis was nothing more than a temporary group chat. When war broke out, everyone was thinking about themselves. The CCP had hoped that its old friend Russia would help shoulder the pressure at a crucial moment, maybe even count on Putin to support Iran and share the public relations burden. But what happened instead? Moscow knows that Iran can't hold on, so there's no need to take sides and risk going down with it. This means that CCP has become a lonely outcast. The axis of terror is falling apart. Iran's top officials are preparing to flee. Russia plans to take the money but not the responsibility. On June 21st, North Korea's Kim Jong-un suddenly announced a suspension of nuclear and missile tests and a shift towards economic development, and China remains paralyzed. This war in Iran has shattered more than just Tehran's radar towers. It has shattered the CCP's illusions about its so-called allies. Beijing should realize once and for all that the CCP is not a leader in this axis, but the last one to realize it's been used, abandoned, and isolated. It's the pawn that will end up taking the blame. The Central Military Commission should seriously convene a meeting to discuss the next steps. The situation has changed faster than expected. This war has made it clear to the world that the CCP has no courage to act, no technological protection, and no friends to save it.